Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another Star Wars news update. Today we're going to be talking about the Acolyte, then we're going to go into a discussion about Star Wars movies, and more. But before we dive into any of it, please be sure to hit that big red subscribe button down below if you've not done so, and also be sure to hit the bell to be alerted every time that I post a new video. But without much further ado, and without any more jibber jabber, let's dive straight into it. We begin with the Acolyte, and I was thinking about the Star Wars Celebration exclusive footage, and while it's not been made public and we're probably going to get a different trailer sometime in the next few months because it is a 2024 show, there are some standout moments. So big spoiler warning because I do want to talk about one of them now. One of the major players in the show, one of the big species, are the Neimoidians, which you may remember from the prequel trilogy. And I think it's very appropriate they're returning in 2024, the year we're celebrating 25 years of the Phantom Menace. They've become something of a meme in the last few years, but the biggest question I have, what sort of role are they playing during the High Republic that we're gonna see in both the Disney Plus series but also Star Wars Eclipse? We know there's a good chance it's going to concern the early years of the Trade Federation, considering Leslie Headland's show is focusing on the waning years of the High Republic. And as many have theorized, this could connect significantly to the Darth Plagueis novel, but also the setup for the situation in episode 1. So one thing we do know is that the Neimoidians were frequently used as pawns by the Sith. In the prequel trilogy, Newt Gunray conspires with Darth Sidious. Given the Acolyte is inspired heavily by episodes 1, 2 and 3, could the show demonstrate the Neimoidians' relationship with the Sith did not commence with Palpatine, but began way earlier, maybe with Plagueis or other Dark Lords who double as politicians, as is the case with Manny Jacinto's character? The Acolytes could show us they've been involved with the Sith dynasty and the Grand Plan for the longest time, setting the eventual stage for Darth Sidious. The Acolyte takes place way too early to show him even as a kid, but keeping in mind the show was originally going to be 3 seasons, then perhaps in season 2 or 3, we could see some of his early years on Naboo. A couple of days ago there was a wild rumor on Reddit stating that according to some crew members on the show, Palpatine is involved in some way, maybe at the end of the series, or if the story of the Acolyte itself is being framed as a flashback, then it could be a story that Darth Plagueis, further down the timeline, is telling a young Palpatine the events of the show. We do know Plagueis was a good storyteller. I wouldn't put any weight into this rumor, but it's interesting to speculate nonetheless. But returning to the subject of Neimoidians, I'm curious to see how they play into it. We could see them expanding their government, and as we know from canon sources, expanding their reach and influence by colonizing nearby planets. They also had some pretty dynamic power struggles and engagements with the Hutts. And then eventually they organized with Immunes and the Intergalactic Banking Clan, which is another way they could have got involved with Hugo Damask, Darth Plagueis. Most of our information about him is legends, so the canon version of this economic intertwining and relationship might differ quite radically. And so now my dear friends, we move on to our next subject, some Star Wars movie news. There has been one topic dominating the conversation over the last couple of days, and you know what it is. Star Wars fans very angry at Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy for comments she made in regards to the upcoming Rey film. Many fans believe that her comments came across as elitist, out of touch, unnecessary, and to be quite frank, when it comes to updates from official creators on upcoming films, especially the 2026 movie, we'd rather it be about the story itself, tease some of the action, the things that Rey's gonna get up to, maybe the villain. As a Star Wars fan, that is really all I care about. And look, I understand, it's too early to have heard anything about the plot itself and actual story details, but they're not really focusing on what they want to achieve, its tone, what they want to do with Rey's character, and how they move Star Wars beyond episode 9. Isn't that the point? I do remember a month or 2 ago Daisy Ridley mentioned that she was surprised reading the script, and you can interpret that to mean what you will. She was very excited, but it does sound as though it's not in the same line as the sequel trilogy, which could be a good sign, and I understand production hasn't even started yet, and may not even meet the spring start date that was rumoured. But you'd imagine as a filmmaker or a showrunner with such a great opportunity to produce a film in the Star Wars galaxy, you would want to put forward the message that you're going to do your best to deliver a movie that is a love letter to the franchise and that is something fans are going to love. It's not a good sign when none of these interviews, none of the comments even mention how the story is going to build beyond episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, which is what it needs to do. We've heard nothing about how Rey is going to be developed as a character, the struggle of building a new Jedi Order. There was a bit about it from Kathleen Kennedy, but not from the director herself. Speaking just for myself, and I'm sure so many Star Wars fans out there watching this video, Give us something compelling that expands this universe. You're dealing with post-episode 9, it's like a blank slate. It's a huge opportunity at a time where fans are so divided. The sequel trilogy is behind us. It would have been a handful of years since the last cinematic outing for the franchise. It should be the responsibility and the focus, the motivation for these directors to want to create a movie that I suppose can't really heal the fandom, but tries their best to create a special Star Wars movie that in their heart of hearts they believe is going to appeal to the most Star Wars fans possible. But I said it before and I'll say it again. I wish Sharmeen the best of luck with the film. I'm a Star Wars fan, so I want Star Wars to succeed. And I'm actually really excited for the next Star Wars movie. Hopefully it's an absolute banger. We have no information about it, no production details, nothing, so it's too early to judge. As I say, I'm an open mind. Let's wait and see. In other Star Wars movie news, John Wick director Chad Stahelski says he wants to make a Star Wars film. And when I saw this making the rounds on Twitter, on X.com, I saw a lot of fans excited, hoping he does get to do a Star Wars outing, or as he says in his own words, quote, take a swing at Star Wars. Stahelski said he is a huge fan of the galaxy far, far away, and while making films with his own vision and rule set is very important to him, he does have some ideas. I'm a Star Wars guy, he said. The first Star Wars changed my life path. A story we've heard time and time again. Star Wars is generational and revolutionary. He goes on to say this, maybe someday out there, Disney, if you're listening, hit me in a couple of years. I have a couple of takes for Star Wars. I'd take a swing at that, see if Disney could survive me. There would of course be compromises to work with Lucasfilm in the Star Wars universe, which of course is part of the reason he stuck with his own John Wick franchise instead of taking on bigger franchises and films. And so finally, my dear friends, to wrap up today's news update, this is pretty huge. Star Wars What If, which is a concept borrowed from Marvel which Star Wars fans have truly latched onto, almost happened. That's right, while lots of Star Wars fans and YouTube channels, including my own, have given our own Star Wars what ifs over the years. They're really fun fanfictions. An official version for Disney Plus was almost in the works. Speaking with Movie TV about the successful premiere of the series' sophomore season What If, director and executive producer Brian Andrews left fans shocked when he disclosed the show's creative teams almost did a crossover with Star Wars, and they actually got pretty close. The revelation arose when the interviewer asked Andrews about the possibility of more what ifs in the future, and he reveals he pitched the idea to Kevin Feige of a Star Wars Marvel crossover. And it sounds as though both Kevin Feige at Marvel and Kathleen Kennedy at Lucasfilm did not like the idea. They didn't go for it. And there is some belief that Kevin Feige's Star Wars movie, which never made it to fruition, which was seemingly shelved, may have included some kind of drizzling of Marvel within the Star Wars universe, which I do know is pretty controversial amongst fans. You often hear it being said, don't let Star Wars become like Marvel, so maybe we dodged a bullet. But after Tales of the Jedi Season 2, a really cool anthology series they could create is Star Wars What If. I often put questions to you guys in the polls about this. We recently did a What If Sith Ahsoka versus Jedi Count Dooku if he had remained with the Order. We also did Jedi Maul versus Sith Kenobi. So those kind of ideas and a million others like what if Anakin stayed on the light side, what if Luke turned to the dark side, could make for an interesting series, forcing creators to really put their heads down and think about genuine outcomes and possibilities with some of those options. But with that said, my dear friends, that brings us to the end of today's Star Wars news update. Did you have fun? Did you enjoy it? If so, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. May the Force be with you, always.